For many Iranians, these images would have been unthinkable until recently. It's been over 2 weeks and 150 cities now. Women have been leading men and protests against the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, killed for wearing her hijab loosely or improperly. The protests show no signs of abating, and for now, Iran's president has drawn a line. Protests and riots, he says, are different. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has called the protesters thugs, robbers, and extortionists and blamed Israel and the US for the protests. Iran's morality police, which picked up Amini, took her to a detention center, or a re-education center as they call it, to be taught about Islam and how to wear the hijab properly, are under the scanner worldwide, but not really in Iran. Viral images of Amini in a coma, her brother's testimony of screams from inside the center, and media reports of a fracture on her skull due to heavy blows have not been enough. 2 weeks on, a final forensics report is awaited. At least 133 protesters, including several women who were at protest sites, have been killed by security forces. Over 1,000 people have been arrested, including at least 20 journalists. The state media says 41 people are dead, including several security personnel. Now, showing one's hair is forbidden in Iran for women, which is why this imagery of women chopping off their hair is tragically iconic and apt. Iran's Islamic Republic requires women to cover up in public, wear a hijab or a headscarf that completely hides their hair and identity. Iranian women, especially in major cities, have previously tried to push these boundaries with loose scarves or outfits, but not without sanctions, violence, and even death. The morality police has existed in Iran since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Its latest avatar is Gasht-e-Irshad, meaning guidance patrol, to enforce Sharia laws on clothing and behavior in public. They are armed, uniformed or plainclothes officers, and they take people to re-education centers, like the one Mahsa was taken to and killed in. We say people, but it's mostly women. The morality police, in theory, was supposed to counsel rule breakers against un-Islamic practices, but they have repeatedly faced accusations of violence. With Amini's death, the anger has spilled over. An economy crippled by sanctions and COVID-19, a 10% unemployment rate for the last decade. Inflation and food shortages are an everyday reality. The government's crackdown has been brutal. It has cut internet access, power in parts of Tehran and Kurdistan, issued warnings to filmmakers, athletes, and musicians who have backed the demonstrations, like the national football team that remained in their black tracksuits when the anthem was playing after a match. The Revolutionary Guards, the most powerful security force in Iran, are out to crush protesters to teach people a lesson. Some reports say that plainclothes officers from the dreaded Basij militia, which is the vigilante offshoot of the Guards, are out on the streets too. They have been known to beat, loot, and gun down protesters to crush previous protests. So where does this go from here? If one rewinds to 1979, the leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Khomeini, then ruled that hijabs would be mandatory for all women in their workplaces, and that he considered uncovered women to be naked. In 2022, President Raisi, a hardline cleric elected last year, signed an order to enforce new restrictions, which included surveillance cameras, to fine unveiled women or refer them for counseling, and a mandatory prison sentence for any Iranian who questioned or posted content against the hijab rules online. One would think the world has moved on since 1979, but not really. India has not said anything about the Iran protests or the state's crackdown on protests. The UK and many European nations have not said a word officially. The United Nations office in Iran has also not said anything. The United Nations Secretary General did issue a statement 10 days into the protests, asking Iranian security forces to stop using unnecessary or disproportionate force, whatever that means. France has issued a statement supporting the women, criticizing the crackdown. So has Canada, along with sanctions against Iran, and even the US, unlike its silence 13 years ago when similar protests took place in Iran. This has led the Ayatollah to issue his latest statement. President Raisi equated the protests with threatening the security and peace of Iran, which has meant drone and missile strikes into northwest Iraq. Why Iraq? Because Iran blames the armed Iranian Kurdish dissidents also for instigating the protests in Iran, and about 10 million Kurds live there. I'll stop here. There has been a lot of commentary around the dichotomy of supporting women removing the hijab in Iran versus asking for girls to wear the hijab in India. Where do you stand on that? We'd want to hear your thoughts about how you see this. And if this video gave you some context and clarity around this newsworthy story, please like it to show your support and consider making a contribution to Newsworthy so we can keep doing journalism worth your time and intelligence. You can make a contribution via the Super Thanks feature below this video on YouTube. You can also support us via Razorpay, the link to which is in the YouTube video caption and on our Instagram bio. Contribute whatever you can. We'll make the most of it and remain answerable only to you. If you've been listening, thank you for your time.